defending Patrick Mahomes. Take a listen. Tried to do it too much.
Disrupt timing from the receivers, getting off the line of scrimmage. Try to give our D line as much time to get to the quarterback. And then pack in those zones. And switch up the picture on the quarterback, and make him have to play quarterback.
Okay.
What's up, Wiles?
It just felt like a hot take, and then it was just like a guy talking about playing defense.
Well, I mean, what's the?
I don't know. What's the question? Your reaction?
I think there is a misnomer that you keep Mahomes in the pocket, you win. Now, I know I'm not poking at you, Coach. I agree with
I saw it.
but that play didn't, for the record, that play happened outside of the pocket. It was it was a pick six, happened outside of the pocket, rolling to his right, the thing you always want to prevent, and Patrick made a mistake.
But so did the one touchdown that he had, right? The first touchdown.
Patrick had 3 touchdowns in the game.
I know, I'm just saying.
A couple beautiful dimes from the pocket as well.
4 if you count this one.
Those late ones.
But no. Here's what I mean. I totally agree, and the tape backs up. So many of Mahomes' greatest career highlights have come on plays that look exactly like that. You know what I mean? He's getting rushed, he moves, rolls to his right, and does something great. Since Patrick Mahomes came into the league, with or without pressure, in the pocket, the only player with a higher passer rating is Drew Brees, who hasn't, in the last 7 years. Brees obviously has been gone. In the last 3 years, in the pocket, the only player with a higher passer rating is Jared Goff, who's been great in the pocket, by the way. So even these last 3 years when his numbers have been down. So I agree that he is at his most explosive on the move doing crazy Patrick Mahomes stuff. The idea that if you just keep him in the pocket, you neutralize him, that hasn't been who he's been at any point in his career.
There are other elements to what Cooper said. He talked about the timing, disrupting the timing, and on a West Coast offense, it's all based on spacing and timing. So if you can disrupt the timing, so the receiver's not where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there, or the spacing, they're too close together, they're too far apart. That's a big part of beating a West Coast offense. And Cooper throughout the game did do a lot of rerouting of receivers, so I think that was part of it. And then his second point was in order to give our defensive line a chance to get there. So I think what they were selling to the secondary was if you can just hold up and disrupt the timing long enough to allow our defensive linemen to overwhelm their offensive linemen, then we've got a chance to win the game on top of keeping him in the pocket. So I don't think it was just as simple as keeping him in the pocket. I think it was also the disrupting the timing that he talked about to give the D linemen.
Yeah, and I mean, it obviously sounds like an insult. I don't think he meant it that way, but I do think he's given some game plan. And, Nick, I don't think the thought is, oh, if we keep him in the pocket, he's going to struggle. He's going to be bad. I think that's our best chance of beating him. Like, that's the worst version, if you will, of Mahomes. If he gets out scrambling or running around making plays off schedule, then we're dead. So I think that was probably what it was.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Listen, it wasn't an insult. It's an insult when you try to just put in quotes, make Mahomes have to play quarterback and add no other context to it. What essentially he's saying is like, to neutralize all of this from the X's and O's and standpoint, because, someone like Mangini will explain that way better than I ever could, so I don't need to just repeat what he said. Although Greg Cosell, I did a clip before about the defense breaking all that down that I think was very well, and a lot of it was disrupting the timing and where the various players were, where there were throws and plays for Mahomes to make, but because the timing was off and then he was getting so much pressure, like he couldn't make the throws that he wanted to do. It was just an absolute masterclass from the Philadelphia Eagles defense. But in terms of the whole make Mahomes have to play quarterback, it's like, right, it's like make him have to make decisions, make him have to do his job essentially, right? Like, because a lot of times these quarterbacks thrive and succeed when it's easy for them. when it's kind of effortless for them. But when you're actually asking them to play quarterback, when they really have to wheel and deal and make decisions and go through their progressions and et cetera, like, like it's harder. You're more likely to, to make mistakes, to mess up, which is exactly what happened. So this isn't like such like an insult where they're saying that Mahomes doesn't really play quarterback, or he's right, like he's not a good passer, and so we just want to make him a passer. And right, like people always try to twist these things around. They do it with every quarterback, and it's pretty frustrating. When they say like, oh, we want to turn Lamar Jackson into a passer, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, heck, they say about about Jalen Hurts. Now, the difference that I take and that I say will be insulting is like, yeah, technically, you want, it's if something is technically not your strongest suit, like if Jalen Hurts is at a 10 at everything else, but technically he's a 9 at passing, right? Well, then, like, yeah, your best chance to win is to make him rely more on that 9 rather than that 10. That's totally fair. The difference where other people take it to the next level is they say, that's how you beat him, or he's not good enough. I'm betting that he's not actually a 9, he's a 4. So if you do that, it's done. Like, that's what I'm always kind of like, that's infuriating to hear, because it's just, that's when we start to say like, that's disrespectful, that's insulting. Again, at the end of the day, they were just kind of pretty much saying, Cooper DeJean's pretty much just saying like, we're just trying to make it more difficult for Patrick Mahomes to navigate being a quarterback. And, a lot of defensive coordinators have talked about Mahomes. This is like actual active defensive coordinators about, him not being a great pure progression, reader, quarterback. And it's, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing. It's okay to admit that Patrick Mahomes isn't legendary at every single aspect of his game, just like Tom Brady wasn't. Tom Brady wasn't able to scramble around and rip off runs. Like, not everyone has every single thing you ever wanted, in a quarterback. It's just the reality of the situation. But I still love how all of these clips are just nothing but still centered around Mahomes and the Chiefs and etc., rather than like actually what the Philadelphia Eagles did and Cooper DeJean, etc., etc. Like, it's still more in the context of Patrick Mahomes, and it's just like, it's just pretty irritating. But someone said something that I thought was really, really interesting in the comment section, because there's a lot of interesting takes. There's a lot of Cope takes where they're complaining about the O-line, or they're complaining about weapons. Well, you only had Kelsey and Worthy and this and that. And it's really funny. And Nick is making those complaints too, to a degree, at various times. And it's really funny because he made fun of other quarterbacks like Jared Goff, who he mentioned in this very video, Brock Purdy. Where are those quarterbacks without their Avengers? Or he talks about other quarterbacks. Oh, well, this quarterback's not good when he's being pressured. Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts. And then now here we have perfect example then. Okay, if you want to blame the O-line, well, then why aren't you offering that for some of these other quarterbacks? You want to blame the lack of weapons? Okay, why aren't you offering that for these other quarterbacks? And again, when you're talking about Patrick Mahomes being the GOAT, I thought the whole thing is that he's supposed to overcome that. He's supposed to be able to win these games without a stacked deck. And he failed with flying colors, with moldy colors. And, that was more, but like I said, I've said this multiple times, that's more about the Eagles doing it. The Eagles understood who Patrick Mahomes is as a quarterback. They had the proper evaluation. Surprise, surprise, they have the coordinator who faced him many times. That's interesting. Is it safe to say that Fangio knows him better than any other defensive mind out there, outside of maybe Spags, and Spags sees him, every single game? Interesting. So maybe Fangio knows how to kind of, limit Patrick Mahomes, especially when he actually has the roster in place, the actual defense in place, the bodies in place. We don't have to use the nonsense of his time in Miami and Denver when his teams were objectively terrible, and when he had quarterbacks who could not sustain drives or literally kept turning the ball over and giving extra possession after extra possession after extra possession. Kind of interesting when you look at it like that. Kind of interesting that arguably one of the coordinators that would know him, one of the highest level coordinators who would then know Mahomes the best in the league, who then now actually had the team to do what he wanted to do, what he envisioned, dominated him. Flat out dominated him. It's pretty interesting. That's like, you know, the claim is, and Nick even says this, like, this may have been his worst game ever. And it wasn't just an off game. Like, there's a difference. When you just have an off game, it's like, it's a bad throw. You were a little short. You were a little long. You had someone open, but you threw it in the dirt. You let it sail out of bounds. Like, that's a bad game. That's like a mechanically bad game. Or that's just like, you just didn't have it. But there were just also bad decisions and the inability to do what he wanted to do. There was moments when he was trying to do something and he just legitimately could not do it. And if you rewind it back, he wouldn't magically be able to somehow do it. He wouldn't be able to magically be able to get away from a defender and run away and rip off for 15 yards or so. So when you make a bad throw, you could rewind the tape back and say, okay, he made a bad throw. If you rewind it back, if he just makes a good throw there, then that play is a success. So that's why this game was actually so fascinating on so many different levels. You know, the Philadelphia Eagles showed what you should and can do. They put on a clinic at every level of the defense and offense for that matter, but we'll keep it with defense here. And they gave Patrick Mahomes a platform to also hurt himself at the same time, you know? And they took advantage of it. So they beat him. They gave him the room to beat himself. And then when he beat himself, the Eagles were there to actually take advantage of it. You know, they were able to get the interceptions. They were able to get the, the 1 yard gain or something, you know, whatever it may be. They were able to force the bad throw, and now it's 3rd and long, or now it's 4th and long, and now they can't go for it on 4th down. So that's what made, you know, this such a master class at, like, again, no matter how you look at it, no matter how zoomed in or zoomed out, like, it's just, it's the definition of a master class. But again, I still laugh because the conversation is still about, like, well, Patrick Mahomes is actually the best quarterback in the pocket, blah, blah. It's like, that's not actually the conversation. We can keep doing all the sleight of hand we want. You can do that all you want. And again, this is not a video meant to bash Mahomes or say that Mahomes is never going to be good. He's been exposed. I haven't said that once, man. I haven't said that once. Once. But I am trying to emphasize the Eagles' defense was dominant in a way that Patrick Mahomes was unable, no matter how great he is as a quarterback, was unable to overcome it. He made his own individual mistakes that were beyond just him having a bad game. Because, like I said, a bad game is just throwing the ball, you know, in the dirt. Maybe a bad decision or so. But, like, this was too collective. This was too much. And there was moments where he failed that you can't just say, well, it was a bad game, because he just lacked the ability to do what he wanted to do. Where if he had a great game, in that singular moment, he would still lack the ability. I lacked the ability to dunk, and I tried to dunk. It wasn't me just having a bad game. I tried to do something that I could not do. There's a difference in that. And the Eagles put that on full display. And that's a thing. That is a thing. So again, we can do the sleight of hand all we want, but at every level the Eagles owned it. And in any of the moments when it was time for Patrick Mahomes to be like, okay, well, at least I'm Patrick Mahomes, so I can still do some stuff, he did not. And he failed and showed an inability to do certain things at certain times throughout that game. And, you know, it's okay to discuss it. It's okay to talk about it out loud. It's okay to admit it. It's okay to acknowledge it. And any excuses that people want to have for Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs team, well, then you better offer those excuses to all the other quarterbacks and all the other teams. You just gotta. You just got it. You can't just offer it to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes can't get all the praise when they win and then skirt away. Because I'm seeing a lot of people say, Patrick Mahomes did have a bad game. I admit that. But what about this? What about that? He only had Worthy and Kelsey. And DeAndre Hopkins is old and that O-line is bad. Okay. So say that all about Brock Purdy last season, man. Say that all about Brock Purdy. You know, give those excuses to Purdy. Give the O-line excuses to Sam Darnold. Do it, man. Do it. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Cooper DeJean and the Philadelphia Eagles on the game plan to stop Patrick Mahomes? Do you think it was insulting what he said or misleading what he said? And, you know, do you think this was more about Patrick Mahomes having a bad game or the Philadelphia Eagles either showing the blueprint on how to defeat Mahomes and kind of how you can go about doing it, or that Patrick Mahomes actually just showed at certain instances within that game an inability to do maybe what he was once able to do? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.